welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Maria and welcome to a new video, and today's video is going to be a reading vlog, and these are the first books that I'm reading in 2025. Cannot believe we're saying it's 2025, but I wanted to start out the year strong. So the first book that I'm going to be reading is probably the most intimidating book that's on my TBR, and that is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And the Stormlight Archive has been on my TBR for quite some time. Basically since I read some of Brandon Sanderson's other works, I was kind of following a bit of a recommended reading pattern for it. So I've read The Mistborn Era 1, I've also read Warbreaker. I did read Tress of the Emerald Sea, but I think you can read that later on. But definitely just want to dive into the Stormlight Archive because I've heard some great things about it and wanted to start out the year strong with basically, as I say, what is my most intimidating book of the year. And I have started it a little bit, I'm about 50% in and I am enjoying it. I'm definitely liking the writing style. I think with Brandon Sanderson, I always feel really intimidated and worried that it's going to be beyond my intellect. I'm not going to be able to kind of understand the concepts that he's building, but I do think that his writing for high fantasy is extremely accessible, and even though his worlds are pretty complex and can be quite difficult to discuss for me personally, he does kind of spell it out quite easily so that you can understand exactly what's going on, you can understand all of the different moving facets of it, and I do really appreciate that about his writing. But in this one we're basically following three different POVs. We're in this land called Roshar, which is essentially always on the brink of war. There's been internal wars going on for quite some time. We're following Dalinar, who is the uncle to the current king. His brother was assassinated quite some time ago and he's basically helping the current king, who is his nephew, seek vengeance on the Parshendi, who are people who assassinated his father, and that's been on for quite some time. We're also following Kaladin, who used to be a soldier, used to be quite well thought of and very skilled, but somehow ended up with a slave brand. So we're getting glimpses into his old life, but we're also kind of following where he is now and kind of his mental state. And within his POV we are getting a little bit of kind of whimsical inserts there. So we have what are called the Windspren, and you've got this little Windspren who's kind of, I don't think this is the vibes it's supposed to give, but it is making me think of Tinkerbell when I'm reading it. He's kind of there for him and kind of speaking with him, and yeah, it's just adding a little bit of whimsy, so I'm really enjoying that in his point of view. And then we have Shallan, who is basically a penniless noblewoman who is seeking to get some apprenticeship with a scholarly heretic, and the main reason for that is to get this soul caster, I believe. I'm only 15% in, so I may be getting this wrong, but she's basically trying to get this soul caster so that she can swap it with her families, and I believe that will give them power and money and basically just help her family get along. So yeah, really enjoying the three POVs at the moment. I would say Kaladin and Shallan are probably my favourite at the moment. Dalinar is a little bit more political, obviously with the war being the forefront of his POV. It is a lot more strategic and political and can feel a little bit more dry than the other two, but there is kind of a concept in there of him having these visions and hallucinations while he's dreaming, so interested to see where that goes. But yeah, I think so far so good, really enjoying this. I have a good feeling about this one. Not sure if it's going to be 5 stars yet, it's still kind of slowly building up, and as I say, I'm only 15% in, so I wasn't expecting too much more from that. But yeah, in terms of the writing, in terms of the vibes that I'm getting from this one, definitely have a really good feeling about this. And then next up I am reading an arc on my Kindle, so it's Immortal by Sulin Tan, and this is in the same world as Daughter of the Moon Goddess, so standalone fantasy romance but set in that same world. In this one we're following a slightly different part of the celestial world and a different set of immortals, and basically at the start of this story we have Lyanne, who is immortal, who is kind of part of the mortal territory, who is governed by these immortals, and at the very start of the story her grandfather passes away and she blames the immortals for this. Because her grandfather passes away, she has to then ascend to the throne, and in order to do that she has to go to the immortal lands to kind of be almost oathed into this position, and she has to kind of promise her allegiance to the immortal queen. Obviously she's harbouring some resentment for the queen because she blames her for her grandfather's death. She's thrown into the path of the god of war, who is said to be kind of this formidable, grumpy, evil being. Obviously when she gets to his abode where she is staying while she's waiting to see the queen, she may notice that things are slightly different than she had been told. But again, with this one I'm only around 20% in, and I would say with this one it is kind of starting a bit slowly. It was very action packed right at the start, but it has kind of slowed down a little bit. But I would say that the writing and the world and the mythology that Sulin Tan has in here is still really beautiful. I love Daughter of the Moon Goddess, really love the setting that she had there, so really enjoying revisiting that within this story. So we'll see how this one goes as well. As I say, this is an arc, so this is out on the 16th of January in the UK. I think it might be out slightly earlier in the US because on Goodreads it does say the 7th, so I'm not too sure what the dates are. But yeah, hopefully I think this video may be up just before it's out, but I'm not too sure. But either way, it's out on the 16th of January in the UK. But yeah, excited to read this. This was one of my anticipated releases for 2025, so really grateful to have gotten an arc for it so that I can read it a little bit early. And yeah, just really happy to be in this world again. I am also doing a reread of Court of Silver Flames, so doing that with my buddy read on bookstagram, and another world that I'm just really happy to be back. And I've really loved doing the ACOTAR reread. It's just one of those series, it's a real comfort series for me, and especially this book. I really love this book. I'm watching Ness Nesta's growth and kind of her determination and kind of seeing a different side to her than we see in the rest of the series. So really loving that, really enjoying being back in that world as well. I'll probably not give you too many updates on that, but basically those are my first 3 reads of the year, and so far so good. I'm really happy with them. Really trying to start out my reading year strong. So yeah, that's the TBR for this week. That's probably all I'll fit into the weekly vlog, but if I do end up reading anything else, I'll let you know and give you an update. But I think that will be everything on the TBR. So yeah, once I've read a bit more of these, I'll jump on and let you know how I'm feeling. Just jumping on to give you a quick update on my reading. So I'll start with Immortal that I'm reading on my Kindle because it's a bit easier to talk about. As I say, this is an arc. I'm around 36% into this one and really still loving the world. I think the world that Sue Lin Tan has built within this kind of series is really lush and rich and kind of steeped in all of that folklore that you would think you would have within the series, and I'm still really enjoying that aspect of it. However, when it comes to the romance in this one, it's feeling a little more insta-lovey than I was expecting and a bit more insta-lovey than I usually enjoy as well. And where I am in the plot right now, there may be a reason for that, or there may be kind of a twist that makes it a bit less insta-lovey, but at the moment it is kind of just not really hitting for me because I'm not really invested in them because there wasn't any build-up really. They kind of met through the initial meeting with the Queen of the Immortals, coming to her palace, her grandfather passes away, and that's kind of the only interaction they have before she has to then go to his palace. And initially I had thought that the God of War was going to be coming for her kind of to seek revenge or something like that, but the way that the plot goes is that she actually has to go stay with him for a while before she kind of signs this mandate with the Queen of the Immortals to give her the right to rule over the mortal realm. And the relationship is supposedly happening between them while she's staying there, but it's very short. They don't really have a lot of interactions, but suddenly there's supposed to be these feelings for each other, and it just wasn't ringing true for me at the minute. Now, as I say, I'm only at 36% and there has been a little bit of a twist to kind of take the narrative to the next level and maybe cause a bit of a rift. So obviously it's quite early on in the story, so guessing that's going to play a big part in terms of how this romance develops. But I'd be interested to see if they can reel it back and make it not as insta-lovey for me, but we'll see. As I say, the world, the lore, the kind of mythical creatures that we're getting in here are all perfect, all 5 stars, but the romance is really letting it down for me at the moment, so we'll see. We'll see how we get on with that one. In terms of The Way of Kings, I'm now around 25% into this one, which is around 300 pages or something like that, and really enjoying this. I do think that it is quite slow paced, and that may put some people off, but it is a huge book, and I do think that basically what Brandon Sanderson is doing here is creating a huge landscape for us to kind of understand all facets of the society, because it's just giving us a full kind of 360 view of this world, helping us understand the landscape, how we've got here, kind of giving us a history of all of these 3 different perspectives. So even at this 25% mark, even though it is 300 pages in, we haven't really got to kind of the meat of the story. There is kind of continual war. You're always kind of on the brink of war with this group of people who are called the Parshendi, and that's kind of the war atmosphere that we're looking at the moment. We're not really understanding exactly what the war is about or why it is, from my perspective anyway. I'm still learning because I'm only 300 pages in, but yeah, still really enjoying it. Still just really trying to drink in all of the information that I'm getting, trying to understand how the world works, trying to understand all the different mechanisms. We're getting a lot of information about different types of magic within here. So there's a type of material called shard plate, magical armor. It will protect their wearer from basically anything. Nothing can get through it, and you can also get what is called shard blades, which will cut through through basically anything as well, and anyone who has these blades or these plates would be called shard bearers, and it's essentially impossible to beat anyone with a shard blade if you don't have one yourself. So yeah, pretty much really sought after within this world. As I said, I think I mentioned at the start, we're also getting kind of these little almost fairy-like creatures, and we've got one who is a windspren who is called Syl, and she's actually potting up to be one of my favourite characters, and that does scare me with Brandon Sanderson because he's not afraid to kill off characters, so I'm really frightened that something's going to happen to her. But she's really cute, really whimsical, really endearing, and she's with Kaladin, so within his perspective we're hearing from her. And yeah, 25% in, still just trying to, as I say, get an idea of where we are with this one, but really enjoying it, really enjoying the writing, and intrigued to see where this one goes. So I am also still rereading A Court of Silver Flame, so still really loving that reread, still really enjoying it. I think every time I read it I kind of notice little details that I didn't notice before, so that's kind of the point of rereading it, is to try and pick out some of those details from your previous rereads. And I may listen to that a little bit now because I am actually going to sit down and try and do a little bit of my reading journal. So if you were here when I kind of started my channel, I did attempt to do a reading journal last year, but I ended up doing it until about March or April and then gave up. But for 2025 I do want to try and do a reading journal again for the full year. I think I will have a reading journal flip through going up before this vlog, so this won't be a spoiler or anything, but the kind of style that I like to go for is a little bit of like a scrapbook style, because I'm not the best at art, or at least if I try and do some art, it takes me a long time to do it, and then it kind of takes me out of the way of wanting to do it because it's just too much effort. Whereas with this, just kind of sticking things down, trying to make it look pretty, and I just think it's going to be easier for me to stick to. So I've done a few spreads, just need to complete some of them, get a few things printed out and things like that, but just want to try and get the first kind of few yearly spreads done and then get my January spread done so that I can be a good bit ahead, so it's easier to keep up with this. But yeah, I might listen to the audiobook for A Court of Silver Flames when I'm doing this, and probably get a bit of time to sit down and read either Immortal or The Way of Kings later and make a bit of headway in those. But yeah, as soon as I have any further updates on both of those, I'll let you know. On to give you a quick update on where I am, and I have officially passed the 50% mark in The Way of Kings, so yay! Feels like I've read the whole book because I'm on page 622, so that's around 55% I think, and still really enjoying this, still think it's a really approachable book. I think we're getting a lot of backstory for Kaladin, who is one of the point of views in here, so he's definitely giving main character energy, and I think now that we're getting into the story a bit more, we're starting to see how these storylines are going to converge, but we're not quite there yet. You know, I do think that even up until this point, I mean, we've read a good good chunk of this book, we're still very much building up this world, building up the characters, building up the points of view, and while some people might find that quite slow, I do think for me personally it's just been really interesting to kind of really dig our teeth into who these people are, into this world, figuring out kind of the politics, where people sit, how people have got to where they are now. And yeah, I do think for some people they might feel it's a bit slow, but for me, there's something about Brandon Sanderson's writing, even if there's nothing really happening, he seems to kind of pull me in with his characters and just with the systems that he's building there and the politics, and it's just been really interesting. I'm definitely enjoying Dalinar's point of view a bit more than I was initially. Initially it was very political, you know, it was all about the political landscape and what they were doing with the military and the strategy, but it's definitely evolved a little bit to more of his own turmoil, his own kind of inner trauma from losing his brother, and we're definitely seeing a little bit of moral conflict within his brain and how he does things, and kind of him looking inside himself and wondering, is he going crazy with these hallucinations that he's getting, and definitely enjoying his point of view more, really enjoying getting to know the characters in and around that side as well. But yeah, really enjoying all the POVs. We haven't had much from Shallan up until now. She's kind of come back into the picture in the last few chapters, but for a good chunk of it she wasn't really there. It wasn't really following her story with trying to get the artifact or anything like that, so we have got back into her POV and I have really enjoyed that as well. So yeah, I think count how many times I said enjoyed there, but still really intrigued by the story, interested to see where this goes. And even though, as I say, I've read 622 pages, it hasn't felt like that. It definitely has felt like it's went quite quickly, and that's always a good sign with a book, especially a big chunky book like this. So yeah, excited to continue on with this one. But I have now finished Immortal by Sue Tan, so I finished this morning, and I would say I did enjoy this one. I think if you like Daughter of the Moon Goddess and you like that world and you like the way that Sue Tan writes, you probably will enjoy this as well. There was a trope in here that I'm not a huge fan of. I can't tell you the trope because it is a spoiler, but it's just a trope that I'm not a huge fan of because it impacts kind of the way that the characters interact throughout the story, and then takes me out of the story until it's kind of revealed, and it's just not my favourite. So it's definitely a personal preference thing on that side of things. But in terms of the writing, in terms of the imagery, in terms of the kind of mythology and folklore that Sue Tan imbues into her stories, I really loved it. I really like the writing, really like the setting, and as I say, if you like Daughter of the Moon Goddess and that series, you'll definitely really like this. It is very reminiscent of that series, but for me I wasn't as invested in the romance as I would have liked to be. But overall I think it was a good story. It's a good kind of almost like a palate cleanser and a romantasy for me, so end up giving this one 4 stars. Then because I have finished Immortal, I may be able to squeeze another book into this video, and I think I'm gonna go for this one. So this is another book that I've been putting off, not because I'm intimidated by it, I'm just not sure if it's something I'm gonna like. So if you've seen a few of my videos, you may have seen me mention that with Magnolia Parks, I read the first book and I wasn't really enamoured by it initially, and I didn't think it was going to be something for me, but lots of people have been saying that basically you need to read the second book and read on within the series for everything to kind of click, and hopefully I should enjoy it a little bit more. So I think because this is going to be quite an easy read and I think I can read this quite quickly, I think I may pick this up in this video as well and just try and kind of speed through this and just try and get into this one and have this as kind of a palate cleanser for in between reading The Way of Kings. I don't find that I really need to come away from reading The Way of Kings, but this is just good to kind of have for if I'm doing a bit of housework or something like that. I will maybe listen to the audio of this one on Spotify, and it's easier to follow, and it means I won't be missing details from The Way of Kings if I'm listening to this instead. So yeah, I think I may try and start this one because I think I'll be able to finish this before I have to finish this vlog. So yeah, I'll let you know how I get on with this one once I start it. But I did just want to show you something that I got today that I just thought was really fun, and this is totally from an Instagram shop. It just came up on my feed. Never heard of this shop before, so it was a bit of a gamble. I wasn't too sure if I was going to receive anything, but basically I seen these on my Instagram feed and decided to take a chance to order them because I just thought they were really fun. And it's basically some Akatar pajamas, and these are the trousers. And I just thought those were so cute. I just thought they were so cool, really fun. As you know, I'm doing my reread of Akatar at the moment, so they're the perfect thing to wear while I'm reading those. And then you do get the t-shirt as well, which is just this one as well. So I ended up getting the medium in this one because I wasn't too sure in the sizing, and I think it was a good choice in terms of sizing. I'm a UK size 10, so these look like they're going to be a little bit oversized and a little baggy on me, which is good. That's exactly what I want. But yeah, happy to say that they did turn up. They're from shishow.com, so I'll put the link for these in the description below. They had loads of different type of things like Taylor Swift pajamas and things like that, so there may be something on there that you would like. I think they feel like decent enough quality. I think for the price, they're probably a bit expensive for the quality, but they don't feel like bad quality or anything, and the trousers do have pockets, which is a huge plus for me. But yeah, I just thought those were really fun. But yeah, I think for the rest of the night I'm probably just going to be chilling. It has been quite snowy here, so I know I'm not going anywhere this evening. I do want to do a bit of my reading journal, so I might actually start this evening because it'll be easy to listen to when I'm doing that. So yeah, as soon as I have any further updates on these, I'll let you know. just jumping on to give you a quick update on my reading. So I am actually a good way through The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, and I've not got too much left. I think I've got about 250 or 300 pages or something like that, so basically another book. But really feel like I'm getting somewhere with this now. I'm not going to give you too much update on this because not much has really changed in terms of my thoughts. I think I'll just wait until I finish this one so that I can give you my overall view on what I think of it, but still really loving it. Still think that the pacing is quite slow, but it's really building up a huge world, kind of a huge backstory. A lot of what is in here is just the backstory of the characters that I think will obviously be pivotal within this story going on. But yeah, not going to give you too much of an update on this one other than to say that I'm nearly done. I feel like I've been reading this for a long time, but I'm nearly there. Just to give you an update on Daisy Hates, I basically read 70% of this within a day. I kind of forgot how easy and kind of how bingeable Magnolia Parks was. I read it quite quickly as well. I think I read it within like a day. And obviously this one is only like 400 pages or something like that, so a lot shorter than The Way of Kings. I have to say, I am enjoying this. I'm enjoying this a lot more than I enjoyed Magnolia Parks, and I think a lot of it is to do that I just like the characters in here better. They're basically doing the same things. You know, a lot of what they're doing is similar to Magnolia Parks. So basically in this we're following kind of the elite young people within London, kind of if you think of Gossip Girl meets Made in Chelsea, that's basically what this is. We're following their lives. Obviously there's a lot of toxic relationships. They've got trauma from their backgrounds, trauma from their family, rich people problems basically. But obviously they're still human, so they are still a little bit relatable. But in this one in particular, we're following kind of the same group of friends, but just seeing the same events from a different lens and kind of seeing what was going on in the background with some of the other characters from the first book. So in this one we're following Daisy, who is part of this kind of crime lord family, and when she was quite young her parents passed away, so her brother has basically brought her up since he was 18, and since she was like 8 or something like that, and so she has a really good bond with him, and he's kind of always been her caretaker. Obviously because they're part of a big crime family, a lot of what they do is stealing art and things like that. Quite a lot of money in it, so obviously they're part of the elite crew within London as well. And we see a lot of the characters obviously that we've seen in Magnolia Parks. So Christian was one of the characters who was kind of dabbling with Magnolia within the first book, and we're kind of seeing the same story from his view as well, and kind of his relationship, how it blossoms with Daisy, which we didn't see in the first book. We kind of heard about it, but now we're kind of seeing the background and getting the full story from the other side as well. So it's adding a little bit of context to some of the stuff that happened within the first book, and I still don't think I like any of the characters from the first book in terms of the main characters. So Magnolia and BJ are still the same people within this. You are getting some people kind of defending them within this one a little more and giving you a bit of an explanation as to why they are the way they are. I still think a lot of what they do isn't justified by that, but we are getting a bit more insight into them. But as this is more following Daisy and Christian, we are really getting to understand their characters, and I do think that just as characters I do enjoy them a lot more, so I am enjoying this a lot more. Is it a 5-star? No. But am I enjoying it? Yes. It's not as insufferable. I'm not kind of hating all of the characters within this. They're doing really stupid things, but a lot of it doesn't feel as vindictive. I think it feels a lot more like young people trying to work out their emotions and doing silly things when they've been hurt, whereas in Magnolia Parks it did feel a little bit more toxic and a little bit more vindictive. But either way, really glad I decided to pick this one up because I am enjoying it a lot more. Whether that means I will enjoy the third book, which is technically a Magnolia Parks book, we'll see, but this has definitely made me rethink on giving this series a second chance, and I think I'll be more intrigued to pick up the next books within the series having read this, but we'll see. Still got a little bit left to read, so we'll see if that changes, but so far definitely enjoying this a lot more than I did with Magnolia Park, so glad I ended up giving it a second chance. Hoping to get these finished over the next couple of days. My sister is over for kind of a second Christmas basically. She wasn't able to get over at Christmas, so we're basically celebrating this weekend, but I do think that I'll be able to get these read over the weekend and finished, so I'll probably pop back on once I finish them and have my kind of final thoughts and feelings on them. So I have now finished both of these, and I think I'll talk about Daisy Hates first because it's a bit easier to talk about, but I ended up really liking this one, and that's really annoying because now I do have to read the rest of the series to see what happens. The way this one ended was just like, is that it? Is that everything? But yeah, I definitely think I just enjoyed this more because for whatever reason I just like the characters a lot more in here. I think I said before, but a lot of what they do within this book is similar to what happens in obviously Magnolia Parks in terms of the toxicity and them almost doing things to hurt other people, but with this one it just felt a lot more genuine in terms of just felt like they were trying to navigate their feelings rather than it being kind of a targeted attack on another person, or I don't know what it was, just for whatever reason I was really rooting for the two characters within this one to be together. Whereas with Magnolia Parks, I wasn't really rooting for them to be together. I don't feel like I seen anything within their relationship that would make me want them to be together, and I think that's why I enjoyed this one a bit more. I think I ended up rating it 4 stars just because I would have liked to see a bit more depth in some of the relationships, and again, I do think that some of the actions that the characters took were just really annoying. I just don't really understand why people can't just talk within these series. But in terms of the character, in terms of the plot, in terms of kind of the story we're following, obviously following this kind of criminal family and the found family that they have with each other with the other criminals and things like that, and even just navigating her relationship with her brother and the trauma that they went through, just added a lot more to this story than, as I say, I seen within Magnolia Parks. And it does mean that I'm going to have to read the rest of the story, but the next book is a Magnolia book, so interested to see how I feel about that one and how I find it. But a lot of people do say from the second book onwards it's like a completely different book, you know, it's like a completely different series, so be interested to see that, be interested to see how I find it and if I can kind of cope with a full book of Magnolia, because that one is a lot thicker I think than the first one as well, so be interested to see. I did have a chapter of Magnolia at the end of this one and she was already pretty annoying within that chapter, so yeah, interested to see how the third book in the overall series but the second Magnolia book pans out for me. But yeah, overall really enjoyed this one a lot more, so if you're like me and you didn't enjoy the first book, maybe give the second book a try and see if you like it, because I'm surprised by how much I did like this one. I wasn't expecting to, and maybe that helped. I had quite low expectations going into this one, but yeah, overall ended up rating of 4 stars. And then we have this one, and all I can say is I'm so glad I finally read this. Really glad I decided to just kind of bite the bullet and pick this up as one of my first books of 2025, because it definitely didn't disappoint. I think with all the Brandon Sanderson that I've read, this one is exactly the same. So the world building was really fast, it was intricate, it was immersive, but it's explained in such a way that it's not too convoluted to understand, and I'm sure there was some stuff that kind of went over my head in terms of understanding and the history and a lot of the information that we got here, but for me it's just not that difficult to kind of navigate and you're not kind of completely confused the whole way through. So I really love his writing style for that, and even though it is high epic fantasy, it doesn't feel like it's too convoluted to me. Even though his worlds are, as I say, pretty intricate and pretty detailed, it doesn't feel that way when you're reading it. It feels quite easy to follow. And I've said a couple of times that I do think that this one had a really slow start. You know, you are very slowly navigating this world, learning about the characters, learning about their histories and their positions and why they are where they are. But I do think it was totally necessary for where the story went, to understand their motivations, to understand the political landscape and to understand the history of this world. And I do think that the last kind of 15 to 20% wouldn't have packed as much of a punch if we didn't have that slow start. And considering this was a over 1,000 page book, I kind of expected a slow start and kind of a slow meandering pace when I was going into this book, so I wasn't surprised by that. In terms of the characters, I definitely have ended up falling in love with all of them. I'm really rooting for all of them. I want them all to be successful and happy in everything they do. I think at the start I kind of said that Kaladin was probably one of my favourite characters, and I do agree with that now. That is kind of my same view. He is one of my favourite characters, but I really love Shallan. I really loved watching her kind of grow and learn and just seeing some of the twists and some of the darker sides to her as well. Really enjoyed that character development, and Dalinar by the end is pretty close second probably to Kaladin. I really loved his storyline, loved the kind of family dynamic that they have as well, so following his sons and his relationship with his sons. So yeah, overall really ended up loving all of the characters. I would say my favourite character was probably one of the Windspren, who Syl, I think I've mentioned her before, she kind of reminded me or made me think of Tinkerbell or something like that, but every time she was on the page I was just smiling ear to ear. Loved her interactions with Kaladin, and I've heard that we do get more of them within the next book, so be really excited to read on and kind of meet some of these other Windspren as well, because I do think even though this did have some dark and harrowing themes, having that kind of whimsical side to it really lightened up the mood for me and really kind of took away some of that darkness that we're experiencing in some of the storylines in here. And speaking of that, I do think there was a great representation in here of depression and kind of what that actually looks like. So it's not just someone being upset or down, it's really someone kind of feeling empty, numb, having no feeling at all towards some of these really harrowing situations that they're in. And I just think the way that it was depicted in here was so expertly done. It was really good. I don't want to say which character it was just in case it's a bit of a spoiler. I don't think it is. I think it is kind of explained, but such a great depiction of that mental health discussion, and just the way that it was done and the way it kind of turned around was really good. I really loved it. So yeah, no, I feel really accomplished having read this, and again another one where it's kind of like great that I finished it, but now I have to read the rest of the series, and I don't think I want to leave it too long until I read the second book in this one. I'll probably try and read that in February just because there's a lot of detail in here. I've tried to take notes of everything just so that I can have a quick refresher when I'm going into the second book, but I think this is one where I'm going to want to try and keep it kind of close in proximity when I'm reading them just because there's a lot of detail and I do think it'll be more impactful if I read it that way. But yeah, overall I did give this one 4.5 stars, and I would say it's because of the slower pace at the start. Even though I do think it was necessary, there were just some times that I wasn't fully gripped by the story. So I think in truth I couldn't give this a 5-star, even though I do think that the writing and the story probably merits it. If I'm being honest about my experience with the book, there were a few times where I felt like it was going a little bit too slow for my liking. So yeah, 4.5 overall, definitely highly recommend. Definitely don't be intimidated. If you're looking to get into high fantasy, I think Brandon Sanderson would be a great place to start. I found his writing really approachable. As I say, just a great entry point to that epic fantasy genre. So that's everything. That's everything for this reading vlog. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think I've had some really good reads this week. I've read one of my most anticipated reads, which was Immortal by Sue Lynn Tan. Read a couple of books that I was not intimidated by as such with Daisy Hates, but maybe have been putting off, and then The Way of Kings, as I say, was one of my most intimidating reads, so really happy with how all of those turned out. Let me know what your first read was of January. If you enjoyed it, was it a book that you've been putting off for a while? Is it one that you were anticipating? I'd love to hear all your thoughts and let me know if it's something I need to be adding to my TBR. If you like this video, do remember to give it a like, and if you want to see more from me, remember to subscribe. I post 2 videos per week, and it's videos like this, so reading vlogs, book shopping videos, book hauls, come shopping with me, book recommendation videos, all good bookish things like that. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye!